And there was a lovely story told by his 9-year-old sister the night Collins was born. She said, work was very hard on the farm. My mother carried the heaviest burden, and she suffered from a pain in a broken ankle which had never been properly set. She said, I remember the night before Michael was born. I was 9. I held the strainer while she poured the milk fresh from the cow from very heavy pails into pans for setting the cream. She moaned occasionally, and when I asked her was she sick, she said she had a toothache, and would go to bed when the cakes, that's the cakes of brown bread, many of your listeners will remember those, were made for the tomorrow. I was greatly troubled but said nothing, as in those days children were to be seen and not heard. The next morning there was the miracle of the baby. No doctor, no trained nurse, and mother and baby well and comfortable. To say we loved that baby from the word go was an understatement. So the kind of stoicism and strength of his mother, who was a young woman with all these children, and she's still straining the milk and having the baby during the night. And he just seemed to be special from a very early age on. And remember, he was only 31 when he had done all this. And my children are older than that now. And I often say to them, could you write what you've done before your 31st birthday that actually formed a nation?
Has your adult life then been a journey of exploration to find out more about your great uncle?
Yes, it has. And I was fortunate enough to be in the Irish government in '94 as the Minister for Justice, and Michael Collins had been Minister for Justice for some time. And I remember walking into the department. I was now in charge of the Irish police force, and remembering that Michael Collins had been there when he talked about the formation of an Irish police force. He said it should be unarmed. He said there's been enough arms in our society. We must put in an unarmed police force. And here was his grandniece becoming the Minister for Justice. And I remember my first visit to number 10 Downing Street, where I came with our then Taoiseach John Bruton and our Taoiseach Dick Spring, and to meet John Major.
So it was a coalition government.
Arrived at the front door of number 10. John Major was standing at the door waiting to greet us. We drove up the road that everybody looks at on the television up through the gate. And I was reminded that I was the last person of my family to stand in front of number 10 was Michael Collins. And in that time, he had come over the mail boat, overnight sailing. He'd made his way to, I think, Brompton Oratory nearby and gone to Mass, and then walked to number 10. But they weren't met at the front door. Lloyd George was inside, fetched around the back. And I thought how different it was for me. I arrived by government jet. I was collected by a chauffeur-driven car, driven to the front door and greeted by the British Prime Minister and I thought, this is another of his stepping stones. Here's his grandniece getting the opportunity to take one more step. We went into the cabinet room. I sat down at the table. I might even have been sitting in the same seat as Collins was when he was negotiating the treaty. And that really, it kind of fills you up. And you're kind of sitting there saying, oh my God, what a responsibility. And so it was, he marked my life in a lot of ways, but I feel that we owe it to him now at this difficult time where even our sovereignty financially is in threat, to kind of recognise that sacrifices are made all along the way in building a state, and that's where we're at the moment.
Thank you, Nora. Martin, let me come to you again, if you would. Just come into the mic just a shade. One of the things I found talking to Kay's dad, Michael, is that, like with Nora, if people were on the Free State side, if there were Collins people, they didn't pass any stories on, or few stories, because the state apparatus in Ireland from the late 20s was dominated by De Valera and the side that had lost but actually had won after the Civil War. Was that the same in your family?
Yeah, there was discrimination took place at that time.
Yeah.
My father was born in Dublin. His father died age 47.
Yeah.
He went... excuse me, Mum.
Take your time.
He moved down the country to live with an uncle. He was a bright student. He got educated by the Christian Brothers in Portlaoise. He went to Ballyfin College. He did his leaving, as they say, and he had no real direction or nobody to tell him the rights or wrongs of things. He was a young man out there, and he wanted to join the police, funny enough. And he went to see a local politician, and he
He was probably told he couldn't get into the police, was he?
He was told that he'd have to toe the line or do what that politician wanted him to do for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then he could possibly get in.
Yeah.
So he told him where to go and what to do.
Yeah, his pride would not allow him, or his principles.
And I've got a lot of that in me.
Yeah. Your grandfather then was... tell us a bit about your granddad.
Well, my grandfather, he worked in Dublin. He worked in a bakery, and he was mechanical fitter, I believe. But he died at a young age. He didn't die as a result of the troubles. He died because he got whatever people get working in flour mills, and they get on the lungs
the
and stuff.
And the lungs, yeah.
And he died a young man and left a family of 8. And my dad moved down the country to live with an uncle. And that's the thing.
But still, the support of Collins followed your father, even though your granddad was dead.
I think he never forgot the conversation with our local politician.
Yeah. And there's a resonance there because we know, again from Kay's family, that her granddad's brother, Willie Doyle, was an officer in the Free State, and after independence, after De Valera came into power, he couldn't get work. He emigrated to Australia. Kay's grandfather, Joseph, the rest of his life, he'd fought for his country, and he had to stand on the docks trying to get work daily and could not get enough work. They paid a price for being Collins men.
They paid a price, and sorry about that, but it's very emotional for me.
I understand that, Martin. I do understand that.
My children ask me now, and it's difficult to explain to them really the implications, but my daughter Sandra now is a great supporter of what I do.
Yeah.
She was with us last night. She's known to all the guys around the table here. And I have a granddaughter called Gabriella. She's lovely, and she's only 10, but they were doing a project at school, and it was something about the name of Michael Collins came up. It was to do with the astronauts in America and stuff. And somebody the teacher asked, did anybody know anything about Michael Collins, or did the name mean anything? And she put her hand up, and the teacher says, "Yes, Gabriella, what does Michael Collins mean to you?"
And she spoke for the next 2 hours.
She says, "Miss, my granddad works for him."
Lovely.
Fabulous.
That's a true story.
Just before we go to the travel, how important is it for you now, and I'm suggesting that it's the same answer for all of you, that now you're able almost to bring this man back to life and to put him in his rightful place?
Well, to sit in a forum like this and be able to discuss it for a start off with your good self, and thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. I mean, that was unheard of up to very recent times. Mm-hmm. And even in homes at home, I go into homes, I frequently go over and back to Ireland. There's houses you go into when you daren't mention Collins, I mean, you'd be asked to leave.
Mm. Yeah.
And vice versa. And this is unfortunately, that's rural Ireland mainly.
Yeah.
But what it has also allowed, Martin, hasn't it? It has allowed people from the Fianna Fáil tradition to stop me and Martin and Bill and others and say, I can now tell you that in our house it was divided. My mother was an absolute, adored Michael Collins. And, listening about your wife's father and how life was kind of rough on them afterwards. Thankfully, our institutions of the state, I think, have been founded so that it prevents that kind of sectarianism, if you call it that.
And for the next generation
for the next generation, you won't have to be in Fianna Fáil to get the post office contract, or you won't have to be in Fianna Fáil to become a member of the Guards.